So when we think about cities in 2024, I think what we need to be thinking about, and this gets to who's going to drive this, deliver it, finance it, new energy sources, really high-speed connectivity, obviously the walkability, the livability, this open innovation economy with startups and spin-offs coming out of our major advanced research institutions. The one thing about cities, and this is unlike our national government and unlike state governments, they're networks, they're not governments. And when you're a network of corporate, civic, philanthropic, university, environmental, labor, government, you don't get hijacked by partisanship. I mean, you wake up every morning thinking, how do I make this place better? You know, and how do I put place over party? So I think the next city, and the next 10 years is going to be accelerated, is really going to be delivered by a group of stakeholders, both leaders and citizens, right? Grass tops and grassroots. The mayors are going to be central to this because they're going to be the ones convening these disparate stakeholders to drive the city forward. And the financing more and more is going to be off the balance sheets of some of these large institutions, whether they're philanthropic or nonprofit or corporate.
Sommer, I'm going to go a little bit further. I say all the time that cities are where hope meets the street. The change that I see that isn't really being picked up fast enough is that subnational governments or cities and mayors are going to be at the center of action because the business community is tired of the dysfunction of the federal government. So what business leaders are doing, business leaders are making a judgment that when they're talking to metros, they're dealing with 75% of the country's GDP. And they're making a decision that they can come to Atlanta, the chairman of Coca-Cola can make a decision with me, and it takes me and 8 members of city council to move an initiative, and he moved 2,000 IT jobs into the heart of the city. Porsche Cars North America came to the city of Atlanta. Who would ever imagine that Porsche Cars North America would move their national headquarters or U.S. headquarters to Atlanta? They moved $100 million headquarters to Atlanta, and if you talk to these folks, Pulte Group's home and their CEO, they said that we came to Atlanta because we were able to do a deal with you and the government, and once we made an agreement, it was honored and things moved. And so what I don't think that people in Washington are getting, certainly as they defund cities, where we don't need them because they don't have a checkbook anymore, so their influence is going to decline with their checkbook size. And so business leaders are going to cause a radical change. And this isn't just going on in America. This is around the world. Business people around the world are frustrated with national governments. When you have a local leader who has the ability and, more importantly, the will to put it on the line and move, that's going to cause the real disruption between now and 2024. 84 million more people are coming into our metros, whether we like it or not. And so what's going to happen is cities and the private sector are going to have more and more public-private partnerships or 3Ps or whatever you want to call them, and we're going to go right around states and we're going to go right around Washington. That's the real story that we need to catch up on.
Bruce, I have a feeling you agree with Mayor Reed.
Look, the federal government has left the building, and occasionally, you just see them running down the block and they're not coming back. But here's the issue. This is not cyclical. This is structural. 10 years from now, and it's great to have 2024 as the frame, they will spend at the federal level $1.5 trillion more a year on Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. We all knew it was coming. The country is aging, just like Europe, Japan, China. When they do that, they're going to scale back and crowd out a whole bunch of other investments, as the mayor is really saying, in infrastructure, in education, in skills, and housing. Our federal government is essentially becoming a health insurance company with an army. And that means, that means everything else that matters in this country is going to be designed, delivered, financed by the cities and their metropolitan areas in these public-private partnerships.
Are states playing no role in this, or are you really on your own in New Orleans?
Well, I think cities feel like they're on their own. I'll give you one metric as it relates to crime and police protection on the streets of the city. In 1996, when President Clinton was in office and the vice president was then a senator, they created a COPS program because we needed to have community policing throughout the country. It cost $4 billion. Atlanta got money, we got money. I think we got $6 or $7 million a year. We hired police officers. We were both in the business of policing the streets of America because it was a national issue and there was a partnership. That funding alone has gone down by 88%. When then you add to that what you talked about, whether it's in healthcare or whether it's in whatever it is, the federal government basically has said, look, what governs locally governs best. Don't bother us. We're not doing the kind of stuff that we did before. And oh, by the way, when Ronald Reagan came in office, he said, we're not dealing directly with the cities anyway, we're dealing directly with the states. And so what's been happening with the cities is we have been left to innovate. The pressure has gone on. All the responsibility is heading to the ground, and the financial responsibility is also heading to the ground, and the authority and the responsibility to tax is heading to the ground, but the authority is staying with the state and the local governments. What that means is there's going to be a squeeze. And so what we're having to do to survive and to compete and to get better is we're having to innovate, which is great in many ways. In New Orleans, as Kasim said earlier, when we have a success, generally the elements of that success are a partnership in some form or fashion with the federal government playing a little part, the state playing a part, the city playing a bigger part, and then not-for-profits, faith-based community, business community, everybody putting all in because we can move fast. And that's just the model that's delivering today. Now, the long-term challenge is that if the federal government does not get back into the game, you are going to see some stratification between cities that have and cities that don't have, and the infrastructure in the country is going to continue to deteriorate, and we're going to be weaker. And we're not really having that conversation that we should be having right now. So that's a challenge coming forward. But I think that you're going to see much more innovation. And I don't know if y'all heard Kasim directly, but what he said was, and I'll borrow something from what Mayor Bloomberg said, listen, because I'm a mayor doesn't mean that I can't go across the sea, right, and talk about economic development and try to get foreign direct investment into my city. That means asking another country to invest in America. They're not worrying over there about whether they're talking to the federal government. They just want business. And so mayors, we can't declare war and we can't sign treaties, right? But we can do a lot of other stuff. And I think mayors are starting to kind of branch out and actually make that happen and be the leaders for economic development and a bunch of other stuff in the country.